Today we live in a world full of heartaches and pain, conflicts, war, and all sorts of problems surrounding us. And so the question is, when will we ever have real peace on this earth? Please join me. The New Radio Church of God and the Plain and Simple Truth Ministries present the Messenger of the Lord with Apostle Yeshua, preaching the gospel of the good news of the kingdom of God and informing you about world events in the light of Bible prophecy and preparing the way for the return of Jesus Christ. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Apostle Yeshua. Some Roman Catholics once understood, but now do not seem to know what is really going on in the world. As mentioned before in another podcast, the Roman Catholic saint and Bishop Hippolytus believed that around when the deal of Daniel 9:27 was broken, the two witnesses would rise up. Since the Greco-Roman churches believe that the two witnesses arise in the time of the end, Hippolytus clearly believed in an end-time fulfillment of Daniel 9:27. Thus, some Catholic writers realized that Daniel 9:27 had end-time application, but not all. Notice a 21st century Catholic position by priest Kurz. Daniel 9:27 seems to apply directly to circumstances related to Emperor Antiochus and the Maccabees. Antiochus made various agreements with Hellenizing Jews that Jewish culture and religion would conform more closely to their Hellenistic Greek milieu. Halfway through the period, the emperor put an end to the temple sacrifices and profaned the temple with the abomination that makes desolate, according to Daniel 11:31 and 12:11. See also 1 Maccabees 1:54 and 6:7. However, merely 3.5 years after he profaned the temple, the Emperor Antiochus died an ignominious death, according to 2 Maccabees 9:28. Mark 13:14 makes a mysterious reference to a future abomination that will be similar to the abomination in Daniel. According to Kurz W., What Does the Bible Say About the End Times? A Catholic View, Sermon Books, Cincinnati, Nihil Astat, Kisner H. Schler, T.P. Imprimi Potest, Link F. Paul J.M. Imprimatur, Carl K. Morrow, Vicar General and Auxiliary Bishop, Archdiocese of Cincinnati, July 19, 2004, Sermon Book, Cincinnati, 2004, page 76. Now, what Priest Kurz is basically saying is that while the Bible shows that something will happen in the future related to the abomination, he believes that Daniel 9:27 has been fulfilled. Various Protestant leaders also hold this view. Those who hold to that view will not be looking for a deal in Daniel 9:27 and are not likely to understand or appreciate the significance of the deal when it does happen. But the deal is for the future, and even some respected Catholic leaders have realized that. Islam sort of understands, but will ignore it. It's not just Catholic writers that have understood about the deal, Islamic ones have as well. But they will overlook it. A 7-year deal is in Islamic prophecy. Rasulullah Muhammad said there will be just 4 peace agreements between you and the Romans or Christians. The 4th agreement will be mediated through a person who will be the progeny of Hadrat Harun, Honorable Levi priest Aaron, Moses' brother, and will be upheld for 7 years. Richardson J. Antichrist, Islam's awaited Messiah, Pleasant Word, 2006, page 48. So this sounds similar to the 7-year, 1 week in biblical language agreement discussed in Daniel 9:27 that involves a prince who appears to be the one the Bible warns will become the king of the north and apparently the nation of Israel. It certainly will make sense that there will be Muslim representation in a peace deal. Here's something else along those lines. Muslim Adnan Oktar, a media personality and prolific author, about what Islam expects to happen as the world grinds down to the last days. Their bad gene and good gene, with the good gene being Muslim. Yes, the Mahdi will communicate with the genes, Oktar says in the film. Mahdi is a leader of both jinns and men. Muslim jinns and jinns that believe in God will assist the Muslims in making Muslims prevail throughout the world. Oktar goes on to explain that the Mahdi will rule for 7 years, which eerily resembles the reign of another character that the Bible warns Christians to beware of in the last days. According to Hapman, El Popular Muslim Personality, Jesus Christ is Among Us, new documentary sheds light on Islamic views about end times, World News Daily, October 26, 2014. Notice also, the last days as described in Islam are marked by the figures of Gog and Magog, Juj, Wajaju, the Mahdi, the Antichrist, Dajjal, and Jesus. Gog and Magog, representing the forces of chaos, have been kept at bay. At the end of time, chaos will break through the wall of divinely imposed order, and the world will succumb to outer darkness. At the same time, it is believed there will be a counter-current or a brief return to the state of spiritual lucidity and primordial integrity that was obtained at the dawn of time. This is the reign of the Mahdi, the rightly guided one. The reign of the Mahdi will be followed by that of the Antichrist. Once the Antichrist has led away his followers, Jesus will then come to destroy the Antichrist in the closing moments of the cosmic drama. Glass C. New Encyclopedia of Islam, a revised edition of the Concise Encyclopedia of Islam, 3rd edition, 2008, pages 143 and 316. Some in Islam seem to essentially understand that the reign of the beast and Antichrist will happen after the Mahdi's death. Now this is true for the Arab lands. However, the beast, the king of the north, will rule in Europe and in some of the American lands, though prior to his reign over Arab lands, eventually as the Great Tribulation begins with Daniel 11:39 and not Daniel 11:40, when the kings of the north and south fight. The time of the Mahdi is the time that Islam believes it will be rising up. This is consistent with the prophesied rise of the king of the south in Daniel 11:27 and 40. Because of this rise, they will not pay attention enough to the deal. Notice that this too, however, seems to be consistent with some Islamic prophecy. General anarchy and bloodshed, that no Arab household will be spared from it. Then a life of peace as a result of a peace agreement between you and the Banu Asfar, or Romans, which they will break and attack you with a force consisting of 80 flags, and under each flag will be an army of 12,000 men. Ibn Zubayr Ali, Muhammad Ali, the minor signs of last days from the signs of Qiyamah. General anarchy and bloodshed, that no Arab household will be spared from it. Then a life of peace as a result of a peace agreement between you and the Banu Asfar, Romans, which they will break and attack you with a force consisting of 80 flags, and under each flag will be an army of 12,000 men. Hadith, Sahih Bukhari, from Signs of Qiyamah, excerpts by Muhammad Ali, Ibn Zubayr Ali, the minor signs of the last day. Notice that not only biblical and Catholic prophecy indicate that the king of the south, Great Arab, will be betrayed, even Islam indicates that the Roman Catholics will turn against its leader, the Mahdi, the king of the south. Hamas and Muslim Brotherhood do not want a lasting deal. The group calling itself Hamas is against a real peace deal with Israel. Here's some information about Hamas' official goals. The covenant of the Hamas, main points, goals of the Hamas. The Islamic Resistance Movement is a distinguished Palestinian movement whose alliance is to Allah and whose way of life is Islam. It strives to raise the banner of Allah over every inch of Palestine, Article 6, under the instruction of Israel. Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. Preamble. The exclusive Muslim nature of the area. The land of Palestine is an Islamic Waqf, holy possession. No one can claim any part or abandon it or any part of it, Article 11. Palestine is an Islamic land. Since this is the case, the liberation of Palestine is an individual duty for any Muslim, wherever he may be. The call to jihad. The day the enemies usurp part of Muslim land, jihad becomes the individual duty of every Muslim in the face of the Jews. Usurpation, even if it's compulsory, the banner of jihad will be raised, and every Muslim in the world will come forward in response to the call of duty, loudly proclaiming jihad. This cry will reach the heavens and will go on being resounded until liberation is achieved, the invaders vanquished, and a last victory comes about. Article 33. Rejection of a negotiated peace settlement. Peace initiatives and so-called peaceful solutions and international conferences are in contradiction to the principles of the Islamic resistance movement. Those conferences are no more than a means to appoint the infidels as arbitrators in the lands of Islam. There is no solution for the Palestinian problem other than jihad. Initiatives, proposals, and international conference are but a waste of time, an exercise in futility. Article 13. Condemnation of the Israel-Egypt peace treaty. Egypt, to a great extent, removed from the circle of struggle against Zionism through the treacherous Camp David agreement. The Zionists are trying to draw other Arab countries into similar agreements in order to bring them outside the circle of struggle. Leaving the circle of struggle against Islam is high treason, and cursed be he who perpetrates such an act. Article 32. The Hamas regards this thing as treason to the group and the Islamic world for their future role in the fight against the warmongering Jews. Article 32. So there you have it. Despite what this states, Hamas has a temporary peace deals called ceasefires with Israel. It tends to call for them after they launch attacks and are getting retaliated against by Israel. What about the more moderate Muslim Brotherhood? Notice something about them in 2019. June 28, 2019, the Muslim Brotherhood condemns all forms of normalization with the Zionist enemy and all the actions leading up to the Zionist-American deal, and confirms that all Arab regimes involved in the deal of the century are anti-Arab peoples and traitors to the Palestinian cause. The Muslim Brotherhood said on its Facebook page Tuesday, the Arab and Islamic people's position will remain firm in support of the Palestinian cause, not recognized by the Zionist entity, and is alien to all forms of normalization. The U.S. proposal will devote $27.5 billion to building up the West Bank and Gaza, including a $5 billion transportation corridor to connect the territories. It is part of a proposed $50 billion economic investment in the region, akin to the post-World War II Marshall Plan. Saudi Arabia contends the plan leads to a fully independent Palestinian state. The International Union of Muslim Scholars, IUMS, which for years was led by Muslim Brotherhood ideologue Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi, joined the Muslim Brotherhood in condemning the Manama Conference and the deal of the century, vowing that compromise was impossible. The land of Palestine is all Islamic and not 1 inch of it can be given up, nor is inheritance sold. IUMS trustee Sheikh Hassan Ul Daldo said in a statement on the Muslim Scholars Group's website. This is not a deal. Aldo and the Brotherhood used language similar to what Hamas used in its original charter. It rejected any peaceful coexistence. To them, Palestine is part of a waqf, a holy Islamic trust that no person can negotiate away. On Monday, in an Arabic press release, Hamas, the Brotherhood's Palestinian offshoot, described all of Israel as territories occupied in 1948. The English version of that statement omitted the reference but described the U.S. plan as dead letters, as the Palestinian people, who have been fighting for their freedom for more than 100 years, will not be lured into waiving their claim to their homeland in return for the world's wealth. The statements make it clear that to the Brotherhood and to Hamas, the problem is not Israeli government actions or policies. It is a country's existence that can never be accepted in a negotiation. Yet a temporary peace deal will come. Because it will have a time period attached to it, many Muslims will support it for a time. Could the Prince of Daniel 9:26 be an Islamic Arab? Not all Muslims are calling for Israel's elimination. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has publicly backed Israel's right to territory and the need for a peace deal. 3rd April 2018, Israel has a right to a homeland alongside the Palestinians, Saudi Arabia's influential Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman said on Monday in an interview with U.S. magazine The Atlantic. Asked whether the Jewish people have a right to a nation state in at least part of the ancestral homeland, bin Salman said, and I quote, "I believe the Palestinians and the Israelis have the right to have their own land." Riyadh has sponsored an initiative supporting a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict since 2002, but Salman is the first senior official to explicitly acknowledge Israel's right to any territory in the region. The 32-year-old prince, who is widely seen as Saudi Arabia's de facto leader and a reformer, added that we have to have a peace agreement between Palestinians and Israelis to assure the stability for everyone. Saudi Arabia does not officially recognize Israel and has said any normalization of relations requires Israel to withdraw its claim to Palestinian territory seized during the 1967 Arab-Israeli War. But the Crown Prince's acknowledgement marks the latest sign that diplomatic ties between Riyadh and Tel Aviv are growing closer amid the common opposition to regional rival Iran. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman also made statements committing to interfaith tolerance. Could he be the Prince of Daniel 9:26? Instead of the Prince of Daniel 9:26 being European, Joseph Farah, editor of World Net Daily, posted something trying to teach that it was Arabs and not Europeans that destroyed the temple in 70 AD. Here's some of what he posted. Temple? What temple? The one Arabs destroyed? August 12, 2017. Who destroyed the temple in AD 70? The temple was destroyed by the forces of Rome, but interestingly, according to the historian Josephus, not at the command of Rome or the people of Rome. Did you know that? You do now. By AD 70, the Roman armies in the Middle East were made up largely of men who were not from Europe, not from Italy. They were comprised of provincial soldiers from Syria, Arabia, local forces. While they were under the command of Roman officers, they were not ordered to destroy the temple. In fact, they were ordered to stop the destruction by Titus, who would later become emperor. First, let me quote from the Roman historian Tacitus, who meticulously described the forces that sacked Jerusalem and destroyed the temple. Early in this year, Titus found in Judea 3 legions, the 5th, the 10th, and the 15th, he wrote. To this he added the 12th from Syria and some men belonging to the 18th and 3rd, whom he had withdrawn from Alexandria, Egypt. This force was accompanied by a strong contingent of Arabs who hated the Jews with the unusual passion of neighbors. Now, who did Josephus claim destroyed the city? The Romans. Who destroyed the sanctuary? The Romans. It is not that Arabs had nothing to do with it, but they were not the initiators and of themselves did not destroy the city. The Romans did. The Roman army fulfilled Daniel 9:26. Joseph Farah's article also has the following within it. Get Joel Richardson's groundbreaking New York Times bestseller, The Islamic Antichrist, for the full comprehensive case. Just because a book may be a bestseller, that does not mean that it is accurate. Remember the Da Vinci Code? The use by Joseph Farah of Daniel 9:26 of necessity ties in with Daniel 11:31 and subsequent verses. Joel Richardson and Joseph Farah would seemingly agree with the tie of Daniel 9:26 and Daniel 11:31, etc. But the 11th chapter of Daniel is also problematic for the view that the final Antichrist power is Islamic. Daniel 11:39 tells of the king of the north destroying the strongest fortresses. This king is the one referred to as a prince in Daniel 9:26. In the 21st century, that will be the king of the north destroying the USA as he has the strongest military forces. Then the Bible shows that the king of the north will destroy the king of the south. Notice, at the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him, but the king of the north shall rush upon him like a whirlwind, with chariots and horsemen and with many ships. And he shall come into countries and shall overflow and pass through. He shall come into their glorious land, and tens of thousands shall fall, but these shall be delivered out of his hand, Edom and Moab, and the main part of the Ammonites. He shall stretch out his hand against the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. He shall become ruler of the treasures of gold and of silver, and all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Cushites shall follow in his train. Daniel 11:40-43. Notice that the king of the north is prophesied to destroy what are now predominantly Islamic regions of the Middle East and North Africa. While the king of the south would seemingly have to be Islamic, perhaps called a Mahdi, that is not the case for the king of the north. Let's now also see more about those peoples allied with the king of the south in Ezekiel 30. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, prophesy and say, Thus saith the Lord God, Well, alas for the day! For the day is near, the day of the Lord is near. It will be a day of clouds, a time of doom for all the nations. A sword shall come upon Egypt, and anguish shall be in Cush. When the slain fall in Egypt, and her wealth is carried away, and her foundations are torn down. Cush and Phut and Lud and all Arabia and Libya and the people of the land that is in league, like the NATO forces, shall fall with them by the sword. Thus saith the Lord, those who support Egypt shall fall, and her proud might shall come down from Migdol to Syene. They shall fall within her by the sword, declares the Lord God. And they shall be desolate in the midst of the desolated countries, and their cities shall be in the midst of cities that are laid waste. Then they will know that I am the Lord, when I have set fire to Egypt, and all her helpers are broken. And that day messengers shall go out from me in ships to terrify the unsuspecting people of Cush. And anguish shall come upon them on the day of Egypt's doom. For behold, it comes. Ezekiel 30 verses 1-9. Well, there was a prophesied earlier fulfillment of this by Nebuchadnezzar in Ezekiel 30:10-19. Ezekiel 33 has a fulfillment near the day of the Lord, which means it still has not been completely fulfilled. Furthermore, notice the following. Then they shall know that I am the Lord, when I put my sword into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he stretches it out against the land of Egypt, and I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations, and disperse them throughout the countries. Then they will know that I am the Lord. Ezekiel 30:25-26. Please realize that the Egyptians did not learn that the God of the Bible was Lord back then. Ezekiel 30 is referring to a time when the end-time king of Babylon, the European king of the north, will destroy Egypt and its allies. Those allies are the predominantly Islamic peoples of North Africa and the Middle East, including the Arabs. Thus, it is not logical to conclude that the king of the north, who people like Joel Richardson and Joseph Farah are identifying as the final Antichrist, is an Islamic power base in Saudi Arabia. Joel Richardson and others have claimed that Mystery Babylon is the Saudi city of Mecca. The prince of Daniel 9:26 is not an Arab, like Saudi Arabia's current crown prince. Perhaps I should add that while I do believe that the final king of the south will be anti-Jesus, biblically, there is no way that the final Antichrist will be an Arabic Islamic leader. The Bible does not support the view that the final Antichrist is an Islamic Arab. Could Mary or Russia be involved? A while back, Pope Francis held a vigil to Mary in order to promote peace in Syria. And after that vigil, it turned out that the USA did not end up bombing Syria like it had been widely expected. While some might see that as a victory, it is also widely believed that the lack of action by the USA, which many rebels apparently believed was coming, was a factor in the rise of the group that is now terrorizing and calling itself the Islamic State. However, many consider that their version of Mary will bring peace. Notice what one allegedly Marian message stated in Pfaffenhofen, Germany on April 25, 1946. Wherever it is taught that I am all-powerful, I will spread peace, for peace will be where all men have faith in my power. I am the Son of the living God. Culleton, Reign of Antichrist, page 216. Notice also the following. Dragic Sivik was one of 6 poor shepherd children who first reported visions of the Virgin Mary in 1981. She identified herself to the 4 girls and 2 boys as the Queen of Peace, and then handed down the first of thousands of messages admonishing the faithful to pray more often and asking sinners to repent. National Geographic, December 2015. Back in 1917 in Fatima, Portugal, 3 children claimed to see a lady who gave messages. Some believe obeying those messages will lead to world peace and prosperity. Notice something related to a conference in Niagara Falls in 2013. Fatima, the Path to Peace Conference. To save our earth, we must look to consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Secularism has been the most insane experiment in the history of human folly. How many times had talks aimed at peace ended in war? How many times will we trust in the wisdom of leaders who had no wisdom because they had no fear of God? How long will the leaders of the Catholic Church ignore the only hope for peace in the church and peace in the world? How long will we continue to risk heaven's wrath by failing to obey Our Lady? But still we can have peace right now. Press release regarding Fatima, the Path to Peace Conference. Father Gruner noted that the Pope has just completed a very long worldwide day of prayer and fasting for the intention of avoiding war in Syria. Pope Francis' Friday message regarding the threat of war invoked the very theme of our conference. As the Pope said, and I quote, "Let us ask Mary to help us to respond to violence, to conflict, and to war with the power of dialogue and reconciliation and love. She is our mother. May she help us to find peace. All of us are her children." Again I quote, "Indeed Mary is our mother, the mother of the Redeemer, and thus the mother of all humanity," said Father Gruner, "and she can indeed help us find peace. The Catholic Church calls her the very Queen of Peace, and she gave the whole world a peace plan at Fatima. That is what the message of Fatima is all about." The message of Fatima is contained in a series of church-approved apparitions of the Blessed Virgin Mary to 3 shepherd children at Fatima, Portugal in 1917. 2 of the children, Francisco and Jacinta, were beatified, declared blessed, the final step before canonization, by Pope John Paul II. The last surviving Fatima visionary, Sister Lucia, died in 2005. In the message, the Virgin promises a period of world peace if and when Russia is specifically consecrated to her Immaculate Heart, which ceremony would, the Virgin said, bring about the religious conversion of Russia and with it a time of peace for all humanity. God has chosen Russia as the object of this consecration because Russia is where so much of the suffering of the 20th century began following the Bolshevik Revolution, Father Gruner noted. Furthermore, Our Lady warns that if her request for the consecration is not heeded, the world will face even worse chastisements than the 2 world wars, including what she warned would be the annihilation of various nations. In fact, said Father Gruner, Pope Francis has had his entire pontificate consecrated to Our Lady of Fatima by the bishops of Portugal. This shows how seriously the Pope takes the Fatima message, as did his 2 predecessors, who both made various pilgrimages to Fatima. On October 13, Pope Francis will consecrate the world to Mary in a public ceremony before the original statue of Our Lady of Fatima flown from Portugal to Rome for this ceremony. We are hoping and praying that the Pope will be able to consecrate Russia specifically to Mary, since this is not a consecration of the world, is what she requested, Father Gruner observed. And anyone can see that Russia has yet to be converted, and there's obviously no world peace. Furthermore, as we now begin this conference, the USA and Russia seem to be willing to trigger events that could bring on World War III over Syria. I invite members of the press who are capable of objectivity and honest reporting to attend our conference and listen to what the participants actually say about the problem of achieving peace in the world. It all involves the message of Fatima, Father Gruner concluded. The Fatimists incorrectly believe that Jesus' mother Mary appeared with various messages in Fatima, Portugal in 1917, and the world is suffering now because it did not heed all the messages. A brochure for the Fatima Peace Conference, which is scheduled to end tomorrow, states, "And Our Lady has told us that if the consecration is delayed, we risk the annihilation of nations and great suffering for the Pope and persecutions of the faithful. She has also told us, only I can help you. We have nowhere else to turn. Our Lady is our only hope and help." While this statement is blasphemous, and many will think that this is only the view of certain Fatima extremists, let me state that Pope Francis continually brings up his version of Mary. For example, Massey crowns meet Pope Francis at Marion Shrine in Brazil, and he speaks of Mary, and even had his pontificate consecrated to the Lady of Fatima. Furthermore, as the Fatima Center indicated, last Saturday night the Pope held a prayer vigil to Mary to bring peace. Francis prays and fasts to Mary. The Fatima Center believes that Fatima Mary is the answer to humanity, not really Jesus. Others also seem to share this improper view. Mary alone can give us life. Really? Pope Francis asked the Virgin Mary to grant us the health that she alone can give us, to be always signs and instruments of life. His message was given when he officially took possession of the papal Basilica of St. Mary Major in Rome, which is the oldest Marian shrine in the West. He said, Mary is a mother, and a mother concerns herself above all with the health of her children. She knows how to care for it with great and tender love. Our Lady protects our health. The Bible warns about a lady in the end times, according to Isaiah 47, who is also called a harlot, according to Revelation 17 and 18. As I have contended for years, it may well be that some of what is related to Fatima will tie into various end-time biblical prophecies about signs and lying wonders, according to 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 9. That most people will sadly believe, as they have insufficient love of the truth, according to 2 Thessalonians 2 verses 9 through 12. Believing the Lady of Fatima is not the path to peace, but the path to deception and destruction. Those who actually believe the Bible realize this, as will any who truly check out the facts about Fatima and what really was reported appear there. Please also refer to my podcast, The Plain and Simple Truth About Islam. Consider that there are people who actually believe that if the nation of Russia is dedicated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, as the Fatima apparition supposedly asked over 90 years ago, that there will be world peace and new prosperity around the world. Therefore, it is possible that during the 7 years following the confirmation of a deal in Daniel 9:27 fulfills this prophecy. Pope Francis' devotion to his version of Mary is another reason to feel that Mary may receive credit for one or more peace deals in the future, including the one alluded to in Daniel 9:27. The Bible, however, repeatedly warns against false declarations of peace, according to Ezekiel 13:10 through 16, Jeremiah 6:14, 8:11, and 1 Thessalonians 5:3. And Mary may be pointed to as the source of peace by many, especially since many now call her the Queen of Peace. Could Russia, however, be involved in brokering the deal of Daniel 9:27? Yes! Breaking Israel news. Could Russia be the broker of an Israeli-Palestinian deal? April 17, 2019. The Palestinians are unwilling to negotiate a deal with Israel under the auspices of the United States, but could Russia step in to fill that role? Others are wondering the same thing. FN Russia willing to host Palestine-Israel meeting. April 17, 2019. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov yesterday reiterated Moscow's willingness to host a meeting for Palestinian and Israeli representatives without preconditions, quote unquote. Speaking on the sidelines of the 5th session of the Arab-Russian Ministerial Forum in Moscow, Lavrov said that Russia rejects foreign dictates and prepared prescriptions, quote unquote, to resolve the crisis in the region. For his part, Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul Gate praised Russia's staunch rejection of the U.S. recognition of Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, saying the U.S. position was a flagrant violation of international law and destroyed the basis for the Middle East peace process and the principle of land for real peace. Russia could be involved, although the Bible does not specifically say that the king of the north actually brokers the deal, but only that he, when a prince confirms it for a period of time. So, my friends, I will continue with this interesting topic and subject with the conclusion of it in the next podcast. Until next time, this is Apostle Yeshurun saying goodbye, friends. You have heard the messenger of the Lord with Apostle Yeshurun, preparing the way for the return of Jesus Christ. For more information on this podcast and this program, you may write us by email at Yeshurun, Apostle of the Lord, at AOL.com. Again, that is Yeshurun, Yeshurun, Apostle of the Lord, at AOL.com. This podcast was sponsored by the New Radio Church of God and the Plain and Simple Truth Ministries, and by the free will offerings, tithes, and donations of those who are listeners of this podcast and are supporters of this great work of God. The preceding program has been a Plain and Simple Truth Ministries presentation.